Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk About It with Jackie and Megan. Today, when we're recording this, it is almost Easter.
Almost
So
Easter. Woo.
we want to talk about if Easter is a Christian or pagan holiday. We did an episode sort of similar to this back in October about Halloween. But I think both you and I have noticed recently, or maybe just with TikTok, that it's sort of becoming more popular to be like, hey, all of these Christian holidays are actually pagan. So we want to
Mm,
talk about that. Is it actually pagan origins, or are these
yeah.
Christian holidays? So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jackie, before we start?
Just that I'm happy there are like larger Christian organizations responding to these TikToks. I think I saw the most hilarious one was on Christmas. It was someone from Catholic Answers did a really funny like TikTok response to this someone saying, "Hey, Christmas is actually pagan." And I thought it was great. So, I'm just happy there are Christians responding because so many of their TikToks are so poorly researched. And it's
And to
just
be fair,
yeah.
like if you just do a Google search, like is Easter pagan, you're gonna get all these websites with just like the most outlandish stories with like nothing backing it up. They'll just be like, oh yeah, they are. And so I can understand if you are someone who's not a Christian, if you just like do a Google search and you just look at
Yeah.
all the keywords and you're like, oh, cool, so it is, and just
Same with
don't think
Halloween.
beyond that.
Yeah, yeah. And also, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts that even if, say, a certain holiday, like things around a certain holiday started pagan, we're celebrating a very specific thing, um, that we believe happened. So it doesn't really ruin why we're celebrating Easter, even if there are other things around it that were pagan that were related throughout history. Yeah, I just think it's silly. Anyway, which Megan, what are we celebrating in Easter? If you're a Christian, then I'm sure you know.
Yes, yes. What is Easter? So Easter is a Christian holiday. It celebrates the resurrection of Jesus. The holiday begins with Ash Wednesday, the start of Lent. There's 40 days leading up to Easter. There's Palm Sunday, which celebrates Jesus's triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Holy
Which is
Week, which
tomorrow.
also includes, yes, Palm Sunday is tomorrow, which will be yesterday once this episode comes out. uh,
Oh yeah.
and then Holy Week, which includes Holy Thursday, celebrating the Last Supper, Good Friday, which remembers the crucifixion, and then it ends with Easter Sunday, which is celebrating the resurrection.
Hmm. Yes.
This is a little interesting fact. Protestants and Catholics follow the Gregorian calendar, whereas Orthodox actually follow the Julian calendar, so they have different Easters. I think it's like a week apart.
Hmm. Yeah. I always remember, yeah, that is interesting. I always remember that. They're like, oh, if it's the Orthodox Easter, there was a pretty big Greek Orthodox church in our hometown. And so I always remembered that they would be celebrating at a different time than us. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, and it's right across the street from a large Greek Orthodox church. And so, yeah, like the week after Easter, they're like ringing their bells and they're celebrating Easter. We're like, what is going on over there?
I
So,
know.
yes. I
Yeah.
also read that in some denominations of Protestant Christianity, I think these are like more high church liturgical ones, Easter Sunday marks the beginning of Easter tide or the Easter season, and that ends on Pentecost Sunday. So,
Ours, it's the
kind
same
of
in Catholicism. Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. We have one of the fun things about being Catholic or it, and some probably also high church Protestant churches. Is that Christmas also extends way beyond the actual day. So you'll hear a lot of Christians being like, it's still Christmas. Christmas didn't pass. Keep your Christmas decorations up. It's like an intense thing. Because some people have tied it so much to that day, which like all of
Mhm.
society has. And then Catholics are like, don't take your decorations down. So same thing for Easter. Like, it's still Easter. Happy Easter. Like,
Funny.
okay. I
Hey,
mean,
I'm
yeah.
all for that. I'm
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
the
all
one
for
who's
that
like
too. I'm like, okay.
leaving
I just wish the
decorations up way
presents kept
longer.
coming, after
Yeah,
Christmas. I'm like, okay,
let's keep
gift every
celebrating. Let's
day.
keep partying.
Yeah.
All right. So, where does the name Easter come from? So, we talked about this in our Halloween episode, like All Hallows Eve, right? Where the
Mhm.
name comes from. Where does Easter come from? So, this was interesting. I did a little research on this. Basically, short answer is we don't know, but there are some theories. So, one, some historians maintain that Easter derives from a Latin phrase that means dawn, which makes
Mm.
sense. Resurrection, dawn, right? In old High German, it it's a word that's like Easterum, so you can see where we get Easter from that. So once again, dawn pointing to resurrection makes sense. Whereas other people will say, oh, the English word Easter actually comes from Eastrae, which is an Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring and fertility. And so this is where you get people
Mm.
saying that Easter actually has like a pagan origin and it was like a spring fertility festival.
Mm.
Um, the problem with this is we don't have any hard evidence that this goddess was ever worshipped by anyone anywhere.
Mhm.
The only mention of this apparent goddess comes from like a passing reference in the writings of the Venerable Bede, which was he was an 8th century monk and historian. So he wrote about this like goddess in these pagan cultures that they, celebrated during the Christian Easter season.
Mm.
That's it. She's not mentioned anywhere else in any ancient writings. There are no shrines, there are no altars, there are like nothing to document any such worship. So it's possible that he could have just extrapolated this name from something else. Maybe it was a very small group of people. Who knows? So that's sort of the background of like people thinking it's pagan. Um, in the 19th century, a German folklorist, Jacob Grimm, like Grimm's fairy tales, he researched the origins of the German name for Easter and he traced it back to Ostern, which is an old High German word. Both words relate to the German word for east. And Grimm admitted he couldn't find any solid link between Easter and pagan celebrations. So he just sort of made up, like, oh, this Ostra was possibly the name of a German goddess. But that was just completely based on conjecture.
Mm.
And there's no mention of like any such goddess in any writings of the time. Um, and for me, when I hear like, oh, maybe it was traced to this German word for east, to me, that also makes sense that it would be referencing the resurrection because you see in early Christianity, east,
Mhm.
like when people were baptized, they were always baptized facing the east. That was very much pointing towards heaven and resurrection and new life, whereas the West was sort of like your old life. So to me, when I hear like, oh, maybe it could be traced back to the word for East, that just makes complete sense that it would be referencing a Christian holiday then. But I don't know. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I think I agree. And also, I think, I don't know, I just think it's silly that it matters, like, oh, what we're calling it, or even if all of these things were true about the pagan holiday, it's that we very much believe Jesus resurrected, and a lot of things in society will like get tied together. As you
Mhm.
said, there's not even really good evidence for the claim that it was pagan. Um, and I think people that want to disprove Christianity will jump on that. But yeah, I think that just because we celebrate Easter at a certain time of the year, or we've decided this is the best time to like celebrate Easter, um, or call it Easter, doesn't mean that it negates the reason why we're celebrating it as Christians, that Jesus died and rose from the dead. Um, Even if it was built around other traditions that were already in society, or maybe they were trying to like reclaim that people believed in these pagan goddesses of rebirth. And it's like, no, actually, it's true that Jesus was our real like source of resurrection or rebirth.
Mhm.
So we're gonna celebrate it here at this time. Um, so to me, that doesn't really matter. I mean, yeah, there's also with
That was one thing I was thinking of too. It was just like, obviously, as Christians, we don't believe that the day we're celebrating Easter, which one changes every year depending on the calendar, is like the literal day, like, oh yeah, that's the day Jesus rose from the dead. Like, no, we don't know that exact day. Most likely it wasn't in the spring.
yeah, same with
Because Jesus
Christmas.
probably also wasn't born in the winter. Like there's just like a lot of things. So obviously these holidays, if they were chosen on to be like taking place during significant pagan times, to your point, that makes sense. That as Christians, we were trying to reclaim those holidays and reclaim those seasons and point towards what is true.
Mhm.
So, yes, springtime, people are thinking of rebirth, they're thinking of regrowth, sort of the death of winter is ending and plants are resurrecting, trees are rebudding, things like that. It's a good time to then reflect on and remember that Jesus rose from the dead. So that makes perfect sense. In the dead of winter, when things feel hopeless, Jesus comes. That
Yeah.
makes total sense for Christmas, um, and other holidays as well. So yeah, that doesn't bother me either. To me, that
Not at
doesn't mean the
all.
holiday itself has pagan roots, just
No.
because things either got sort of mixed together
Yeah.
or the holiday was put at a specific time because of those things. Yeah, that doesn't bother me. Or that doesn't make me concerned that we shouldn't celebrate our holiday because it might have this like connection. No, they're not related.
No, not at all. Yeah. And yeah, we don't know what time of year like Jesus was born around Christmas. Like we celebrate it because as a church, we've we have our liturgical life and the times that we celebrate things so that as Christians we can better connect to those things in history and I don't know, have that every year we're celebrating it and remembering it, but it doesn't mean this is when historically we believe it had to have happened. It's just a way that we're celebrating something that truly we believe happened in history. And there's actually, I would love to do an episode on this or have someone on. There's actually a lot of good historical evidence that Jesus did rise from the dead, and there's a reason that we believe that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it's a lack of education too. Maybe a lot of people grow up Christian and don't realize that these holidays aren't like on the exact day or that you don't have to. And so
Yeah.
then when they hear someone be like, well, actually, there's evidence that Jesus was born in the springtime, they're like, their whole world is shaken. Whereas, like, for me, I'm like, okay,
Okay,
cool. That's
great.
awesome. There's evidence
I
that
don't really
Jesus was
care.
born. Like, that's just proving my point.
I know. Jesus was born and was God. That's the point. And yeah, and there's no historical way to prove he was God. Like that's a theological argument and a whole other thing, but yeah, I just find that silly. Or that he had to be born in a specific type of scene or setting that we always picture, because some people argue he was actually born in a cave. Like, I don't really care what happened. I mean, he was born and he was God,
Yeah.
and that's what matters to me. And that and there's historical evidence that someone like Jesus was crucified.
Yeah.
That's something that most historians completely agree on, is that Jesus existed, which no one really argues against that, and that he was crucified. Um, and it is even historically noted that something mysterious did happen with his body. Like something happened there, that his body disappeared, and then there are very good arguments um, for why we do believe he was resurrected, besides outside of just faith and theology and all of that, like actual historical grounds for believing that, and why that makes most sense based on what happened. And the fact that people died for him.
I was gonna say,
And
like,
yeah,
people, let's say the disciples like stole his body and hid it because they wanted to make this new religion.
yeah,
Would they die horrible, by the way, horrible deaths for that lie?
yeah,
Or would you only persevere such horrible martyrdom and torture because you knew that this was true?
yeah.
To me, that's super obvious.
Hmm.
Pretty sure
And
you'd recant if you were told that you were going to be, dipped
yeah,
in boiling oil.
yeah, I'd be like, oh, never mind, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Look at that.
Yeah, yeah. That's just a joke. I was just pranking y'all. Just a joke. Or just that it spread so widely, like that we have
Mhm,
Christianity today, which is the largest religion in the world.
mhm.
Yeah. So I think it makes sense. And it doesn't really matter what it's connected to, what name, or like I said, it very well could be that we were reclaiming something. And it just makes sense seasonally, like why we've
Yeah.
decided to celebrate Easter when we celebrate it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's
well,
beautiful.
I do too.
I think
Also,
another thing people will point to, as to like, oh, Easter is pagan, is they'll sort of like really break down like different traditions around Easter. So I thought we could just go through some
Oh
of
yeah.
them.
Hmm. Well, I know I had these traditions of eating lamb, as a traditional Easter food. Not in my family, but we would talk about it like at school and stuff, and we would have like a fake lamb that was made of like popcorn because they weren't actually gonna get us a whole lamb to like eat anyway. Thought that was weird.
They're like, that's too
Um,
expensive.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it was like a lamb shaped thing made of popcorn, and I was like, this is lame at school. So, um, well, as Christians, we refer to Jesus as the Lamb of God. Though lamb at Easter also has roots in our early Passover celebration. So that's what I always learned. And the story of
Mhm,
Exodus, the people of Egypt suffered a series of terrible plagues. I feel like most people, if you were raised Christian, you've heard those stories, including the death of all firstborn sons. And Israelites painted their doorposts with sacrifice of lamb's blood so that God would pass over their homes. And Jews who converted to Christianity continued the tradition of eating lamb at Easter. Historically, lamb would have been one of the first fresh meats available after a long winter with no livestock to slaughter. So that definitely, yeah. Did you have anything like that, Megan, when you were growing up?
we were too poor to afford lamb, but it was
Whoa,
something we did talk about.
right.
Yes,
And that's why my school had popcorn shaped lambs. That's why
exactly.
I learned about this. So,
Yes. But no,
um,
I did learn about that, and we would my mom was big into like crafts. So we would do little like crafts of like making little doorposts with fake lamb's blood, which is like also kind of dark when you think about it, but a great way for
oh,
kids to learn about the Bible stories.
the Bible's quite gruesome.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. But yeah, I also think just like especially like Holy Thursday being the Last Supper, which was the Passover meal
mhm,
happening right before the crucifixion is like obviously very significant. And so we would always talk about it then as well.
mhm. Yeah. What are some other traditions, Megan, that you
One that I saw
researched?
was hot cross buns. Everybody's heard that little song.
Mm-hmm.
You probably played it on the recorder growing up, but they were a significant in Europe of
Hmm.
food. They marked the end of the Christian season of Lent, and the different parts of the hot cross bun had a certain meaning. So they had a cross on them representing the crucifixion of Jesus. The spices inside signified the spices used to embalm him
Hmm.
at his burial. And then sometimes they would also include like orange peel to reflect the bitterness of his time on the cross. So they would make these buns, they would pass them out, they would all eat them together, and it was to remember Jesus' death.
Yeah.
We
Another
did
one.
something, we didn't make hot cross buns, but we did, I don't know if you ever did resurrection rolls.
I did not, but I have a lot of friends that their families did those. Yeah.
So like we would make those as a kid. So it's like you get the bread dough and you roll
Mhm.
a little marshmallow in it. And so the marshmallow is Jesus. And then you bake them. And when you pull them out, marshmallow is melted, but there's a little like hole in there. So it's like, oh my gosh, it's the empty tomb. And we would go crazy for that when we were little.
That's so funny. I had a friend who was like disappointed. He's like, "Well, that's lame. I wanted to eat the marshmallows." So that's
I
what
just
I think
remember
of.
we would like sincerely be like, where did it go? And my parents would be like,
I don't know. That's crazy. Kids'
yeah.
brains. Um, Another one that this is very well known. Some people might not know about the lamb or the hot cross buns, but everyone knows about Easter eggs. And this is something that people have tried to also tie to the pagan holidays, but I think also would just be something that Christians reclaim. But the egg is an ancient symbol of new life and has been associated with pagan festivals celebrating spring. From a Christian's perspective, Easter eggs are said to represent Jesus' emergence from the tomb and resurrection. So, decorating eggs for Easter is a tradition that dates back to at least the 13th century, according to some sources. Another explanation for this custom is that eggs were formerly a forbidden food during Lent, so people would paint and decorate them to mark the end of the period of penance and fasting, and then eat them on Easter as a celebration. But I love that image of an egg, like signifying new life and Jesus coming out of the tomb. I'd never thought about that. Of course, growing up, it was just the very like secular view of Easter, the Easter bunny, and like painting eggs and decorating them. But now when I, God willing, have my own family one day, I'll be like, Jesus coming out of the tomb. I don't know. I think that's so cute.
I also read somewhere that they would paint the eggs red to
Ooh.
signify like the blood of Jesus. And that's where like painting eggs sort of became a thing because you basically you weren't supposed to eat eggs during Lent. So during
Hmm.
Lent, you would boil these eggs, you would paint them like, oh, Jesus's blood. And then on Easter, you could eat your eggs, which a little gross because these eggs are probably
Fair.
nasty at that point, but whatever,
Mm.
medieval times. Um,
Yeah, for real.
I also, my husband really likes this channel that goes over like old timey food, whatever.
Hmm.
He's kind of funny like that. But he was listening to an episode on deviled eggs, like the origins of deviled eggs.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because that sort of came out of Lent as well. Like, oh, you couldn't eat eggs during Lent. So then at the end of Lent, they would make these like fancy eggs and like eat them. And it was like exciting. And so I just found that really interesting. But that sort of backs up the idea that like eggs are something you're abstaining from during Lent.
Mm. Deviled eggs. There was this joke online about going to hell, meeting the devil, and being like, big fan of your eggs, deviled eggs. I'm like,
Your eggs and your
but why are they? Do you
devil's
know why they're
cake.
called deviled eggs?
It went over it in the video.
I'm gonna look
I
that
forget
up.
why. It was something with how they were prepared.
I'm sure, but it's just funny, like the word.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big part of our Easter was always deviled eggs. I love deviled eggs.
me too.
Yeah, those are great. Another
I
one,
was I was telling my
Megan.
husband my grandma would make it was like I just knew we would go over there and she would have even before the meal like deviled eggs laid out,
Yeah.
cheese, crackers, sausage, and then
Mm,
jello. It was like those three things. And I would
Jello.
just eat so much. Oh yeah.
That's so random. I was about to be like, yeah, same. Say, oh,
Yeah.
Jello.
Yep. It was like super colorful jello. And yeah,
I
I'd
love
eat so
that.
much that by the time it was time for lunch, I was like,
Oh,
I can't. I'm full.
classic. Yeah, classic. Yeah, we'd have like the vegetables out and fruit and deviled eggs. And my grandma also always had olives out, and I love olives. Like, as a child, and I would eat them all up. Anyway, yeah, deviled eggs, definitely. I would make those for any holiday. They're slap.
Just like not a holiday, just like a normal day.
Yeah. Megan, do you want to go over the Easter Bunny? Because that's a huge
Yes.
one. I remember getting my picture with the Easter Bunny when I was little, and I thought the Easter Bunny was real. Very sad
That's
when I
funny
didn't.
because my parents did not do Easter Bunny. Um,
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I don't think they ever made a big deal out of it, but it was just like not something we did. We would do Easter egg hunts. Um, but yeah, I like never did stuff with the Easter Bunny,
It's actually
which
super
is
creepy. Like
yeah, it is kind of weird when you think about
Santa's more like believable in some ways, even as a child, because it's a
it.
human. And there's a lot of magic associated with Santa. I actually think I actually like Santa. The others, I would not even consider raising my child with. Santa, I'm like,
It's
maybe, because like it ties stuff to Saint Nick and like that kind of thing. But the Easter Bunny, I'm like, weird.
yes. So yeah, this was something I was like, I know nothing about. So just doing
Yeah.
a little bit of reading that I did. According to some sources, the Easter Bunny first arrived in America in the 1700s with German immigrants who settled in Pennsylvania and transported their tradition of an egg-laying hare called
Hmm.
Osterhaus. The children would make nests in which the creature would lay its colorful eggs. And eventually, this custom spread across the United States, and the fabled rabbit's Easter morning deliveries expanded to include chocolate and other candies and gifts, while decorated Easter baskets replaced the nests.
Hmm.
Additionally, children would leave carrots out for the bunny in case he got hungry from all his hopping. So it's funny because like my we did Easter
Really
baskets,
funny.
but it was very much like not from the Easter bunny. But
Hmm.
yeah, so that is a tradition that is just purely kind of its own thing. It's not
Yeah.
really even connected to Easter at all, but over the years has been connected to Easter.
He got hungry from all of his hopping.
Yeah. Laying his eggs, which is really weird. Bunnies don't lay eggs. They have babies.
Yeah. So that is funny. Um, yeah, another tradition that I think is pretty common are white lilies and
Mhm.
those like flowers for Easter. And I think even a lot of stores they around Easter they sell more white lilies. That's known as like the Easter flower. And for Christians, White Easter lilies symbolize the purity of Christ and are common decorations in churches and homes around the Easter holiday. Their growth from dormant bulbs in the ground to flowers symbolize the rebirth and hope of Christ's resurrection, which I actually didn't really make that connection before. And I love that. White lilies are also the symbol of purity throughout in like other ways. It's the flower of
Mhm.
Saint Joseph because they believe Saint Joseph was very pure, the father of Jesus, foster father, whatever, human father of Jesus. Yeah, so that's a pretty big symbol of purity throughout all of Christianity. Yeah.
Yeah, it was something that I always saw. Like our churches were always decorated with white lilies. It was just never really talked about,
No.
like
Yeah.
why we're using white lilies. And so
Mm-mm.
I think that's special. That's something I want to like pass down to my kids. Like I think it would be really fun to decorate just the house with white lilies for Easter and then talk about like the fact that
Yeah.
they come from bulbs in the ground that appear dead,
Yeah.
but now this flower comes out in the spring. Like that's just like really, really beautiful and significant.
I know. I think that is really beautiful. Um, I wish we were taught sometimes more the meaning of these things. I think it's our parents, sometimes our parents don't even know. I mean,
Right.
it's just something that you're raised with and oh, white lilies because they look nice or around the house, but that they all have a deeper meaning. I like that a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of intentionality with like all of these traditions that because we've just been doing them for so long, we don't think about. But
Yeah.
it is good to remember like why exactly these traditions started.
Mm-hmm. So how should Christians celebrate Easter, Megan?
Yeah, I know. So we did this for our Halloween episode. Obviously, it's a little easier with Easter because it's a less controversial holiday.
Yeah,
Um, but I do think it has been very commercialized.
for
It's
sure.
very, um, just secularized. It's an opportunity for stores to sell a bunch of candy and stuff. So sometimes we don't really go into Easter with a lot of thought behind it. So I think for Christians, this is an opportunity to sort of just be more thoughtful with our celebration of the holiday. Um, I know a lot of Christians don't celebrate Lent, even if they're Catholic. It's not something they really think about. But it is something that is like a really good opportunity during the Lent season to make that a time of reflection and penance and fasting in preparation for Easter. It really
Hmm.
does prepare your heart. Um, and like you were talking about too, even extending Easter to Pentecost Sunday, just making this a more significant point of our year, not just like a day that we eat a bunch of chocolate and do an Easter egg hunt, have some family over, and then it's done. Just having this be a more significant season in our Christian walk, I
Hmm.
think is good. I mean, these traditions and these holidays were made for a purpose and a reason, and it was to redirect us back to that remembrance. And so I think going into it with more intentionality is good.
Yeah, I agree. And something that I was not raised doing as from a child, but thankfully my grandma and my aunt did this, is they celebrated the Easter Triduum. So Palm Sunday is the Sunday before, which I always went to because I went to church every Sunday. But then Holy Thursday, which is it Maundy Thursday?
And like more
Protestants?
reformed ones, yeah.
More Reformed, yeah, which I'd never heard until I moved to Chicago. And then Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Resurrection, obviously Sunday. I always went to Easter Mass, but there's, at least for Catholics, I don't know exactly how the celebrations transfer over into like Protestant churches, but Holy Thursday is a mass where we bless like these holy oils. And then you leave the mass like completely in silence. And it's like, okay, we're descending into Good Friday, which then we don't have a mass because Jesus is dead, so we're not celebrating the mass on that day. They still give out the Eucharist, but it was previously consecrated before. And then we venerate the cross. It's a very solemn, like sad day, like mass. And they go through again, like the crucifixion and the story of Jesus being crucified. Um, and then Saturday, you're supposed to be very solemn, just like because that's the day Jesus was in hell, he was dead, and then you have resurrection on Easter. So it's kind of nice to like have those 3 days, like not even all of Lent, but like very much to focus on
Mhm.
those 3 days leading up to Easter to really like enter into the suffering and crucifixion and then resurrection of Jesus. I think it makes it more special. So like including those celebrations in my spiritual life has been very beautiful. So if your church or a church near you has it, I would recommend going to like Holy Thursday and Good Friday services as well. I think that can be good.
Yeah, definitely. I know, so growing up, my family as a family would celebrate like Holy Thursday or Maundy Thursday,
Mm.
but our church, a lot of low church Protestants only celebrate Good Friday and Easter.
Mm.
I don't really know why, but that's just
Hmm.
how it ends up working. Higher churches like Anglicans or Lutherans or Presbyterians will celebrate like they do Thursday, Friday, sometimes even Saturday and Sunday as
Hmm.
well. So as an adult, I have been able to enjoy that more. But growing up,
Yeah.
my church only did Good Friday and Easter. So yeah, I would encourage you, even if you are just like a non-denominational Protestant, to maybe even just visit a more liturgical church for those services. I think it can be really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
And then for Easter itself, I think like making it a time of celebration, especially if you have been celebrating Lent, and then, you know, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, like those are very solemn. It's supposed to be very like reflective. And then we get to Easter and it should be a celebration. So, like going all out, like do the resurrection rolls or the hot cross buns, like decorate with lilies. One thing my parents did growing up with us as kids that I would love to do with my kids is they did resurrection eggs. So they had little like trinkets that they put in the eggs. So we would go hunt for the eggs, we would find them and open them, and each one had like a little symbol in it, and then they would explain what it meant. And so it was
Mm.
to walk you through like stations of the cross by,
Mm.
these little eggs. So I think there's just so much fun that we can have with remembering and like teaching and even just reminding ourselves on what Easter means, that
Yeah.
going into it more thoughtfulness will just make it a more beautiful holiday experience.
Hmm. I agree. Yeah. And whatever you gave up for Lent, that's what's also nice about really giving something up for Lent and sticking to it is then
Yeah.
having that to like, I don't know, feast in when you finally it's Easter. I regret a little bit like not giving up a certain food or something this year because I gave up social media and then I realized my life was like actually a lot better without social media. Now I'm like, I don't even like what going back on that I don't want to. So
Yeah.
I just find that I wish I'd like given up something that I really like actually is not harmful or in any way or like good and then included it back in. Um, so that's something I think I want to be more intentional about next year, but it's so nice to like, yeah, like give up a certain food. I did that as a kid. I would give up like McDonald's French fries and soda. And then on the day I would like, yeah, I get to get some. I don't know. So I think that can be something fun to do too. Like really stay true to what you gave up and then have that on Easter, which is nice.
Yeah. I gave
So,
up coffee this year for Lent,
mhm,
and I haven't even taken a feast day. So I have not had coffee in so long. And let
yeah.
me tell you, I'm real excited. I'm real excited to have a cup of coffee.
I know. It's gonna be I'll be with Megan on Easter this year. I'm gonna go out and visit. I'm excited. So I'll be with her Good Friday, Holy Saturday. Um, yeah, I'm excited. That's gonna be fun to celebrate with Cece. It's not Cece's first Easter, it's her second Easter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I joked that
She's a little more aware this year.
Cece's gonna have a fellow Catholic with her for Easter this year. I'll be showing. Just kidding. So I'm excited. Yeah. I don't know what we're doing for Holy or Good Friday yet. Are you going to the Lutheran church or do you know yet? Okay. Well, I might be going to a Lutheran church on Good Friday, y'all. So that's gonna be crazy. Never done that before. Maybe we'll do a podcast episode on it.
Maybe
Maybe. We'll see.
share
But
your
yes,
thoughts, Jackie.
I know. Just bash the church. I'm like, well,
Yeah. You're like, I hated it.
I hated it. Yeah, it was terrible. No, yeah, I'm excited. Last year I was sick on Good Friday. I had a very Friday. I was sick, so I just laid in my bed and suffered. And I was like, all right, Jesus, I get it.
Offer it up, offer it
Yeah, I
up.
didn't get to go to anything, and that was sad. But yeah, so everyone listening, have a very blessed Easter. Um, when we post this, it'll still be some time away, but yeah, celebrating the resurrection of Christ. I think this is the holiest time of the year.
Yeah.
Um, that's what at least I don't know. I think the Pope say that recently. I don't know. As Catholics, we've always been taught like this is the holiest and most special time of the year. Easter, I mean, the resurrection of Christ is like the most important thing that's ever happened in the history of Christianity. So, yeah, without that, I mean, that would be tough. We'd
It's
be
my
in a
favorite
bad
holiday.
spot. Yeah. Christmas used to be my favorite, and now I think it's Easter.
Hmm.
Like liturgically, it is the most special time. So, yeah.
Yeah. Go eat some deviled eggs.